What's going on, guys? This is your boy RBG, aka the Random Black Gamer, bringing you a video on Marvel Spider-Man 2. Now, I haven't gotten around to reviewing this game yet because I got it a little late compared to other people. Instead of getting it weeks in advance before it dropped, I got it literally a day before it was released worldwide. So yeah, thank you, PlayStation. I just want to give you a big shout out for that. But regardless of that unfortunate circumstance, I am glad that this game has been making a lot of noise. It has become the fastest selling PlayStation exclusive, and color me surprised, somehow this game has managed to garner its fair share of controversies in the social commentary space. I'm not really going to get into that because if I did, it would be a long video. I want to talk about something else, because usually when video games like this are the trending topic of conversations, they tend to awaken videos that have kind of been dormant for a while. You know that I haven't really been that active when it comes to Marvel Spider-Man content, but now that it's out and it's booming bigger than ever, a lot of my older videos that I provided coverage with have been gaining some traction, and it's kind of going back to this thing where people are still pissed off that Marvel Spider-Man 2 is only available on the PlayStation 5 and not a cross-gen title that's available on PlayStation 4. And that's essentially been the story of this game's life, right? For the longest time, many fans would argue where they wanted this game to be. Like when Marvel Spider-Man 1 came out, you had the Xbox community up in arms because this game wasn't available on their platform. Since Spider-Man has been a character that swung over to multiple home devices and essentially been a third-party character, many assumed that he would make his way to the Xbox One, as opposed to just being a PlayStation 4 exclusive. And like clockwork, the PlayStation fans came back with the rebuttal that Sony essentially owns Spider-Man and they can do whatever they want with the character. And I had to follow that up and clarify things because I had to point out that Sony didn't outright own Spider-Man, they only own the exclusive rights to the movies. It's actually Marvel and Disney that own the other aspects of that character. So if there was anyone that was going to decide where Spider-Man should go, it would be them. And usually when this thing happens, it's because certain things are at play. The whole story behind Marvel Spider-Man is that Insomniac Games really wanted to work on a Spider-Man title. Sony obliged that, and they actually struck a deal with Marvel to get the rights to it exclusively, and Sony would foot the bill on the budget of the game, which is why they would make it exclusive. If I'm literally pouring all my money into something and you haven't even put a dime into it, why would I give it to you? You know what I'm saying? And we gotta remember that Sony is all about making a profit from console sales, so it was a match made in heaven for them. They knew that Spider-Man was a character that had a lot of potential, and Insomniac Games, being the company that they are, would actually deliver on that. And I feel like people get that now. Like, we haven't heard any arguments pertaining to that. Like, that door has essentially been closed, but a similar door has opened up, and it's within the PlayStation community, because now we have people that own old consoles arguing that this game should have been available on the PlayStation 4. This has been a thing that's been going on since 2021 when the game was revealed, and I kind of understood it for the most part, because if you remember, the PlayStation 5 had a multitude of things going on with it, from the shortage of chips to actual scalpers getting a hold of this thing and price gouging the heck out of it, making it hard to obtain for people who really wanted it. And this would go on for quite a while, making it unclear on when it would actually get better. So rightfully so, a lot of fans were a bit disappointed that Marvel Spider-Man wasn't going to be available on a console that they actually had. But I'm pretty sure you guys have heard the saying that time heals all wounds, and that's exactly what happened to PlayStation. They were able to put a band-aid on this thing by producing more units while counteracting the scalpers to make it easier for fans to purchase a PlayStation 5. I was able to obtain one from Sony themselves from an invitation that they offered to be on a waiting list where I can buy it. And I'm not gonna lie to you guys, for the longest time I regretted disclosing that information, because there were a lot of you saying that I was only backing up Sony's decision to make Marvel Spider-Man 2 a PlayStation 5 exclusive simply because I had the console, and that couldn't be any further from the truth. Like, that's not how I roll at all. Even if I didn't have the PlayStation 5, I would argue that the game should be a PlayStation 5 exclusive, because there are certain things that the PlayStation 4 simply cannot do. And I just gotta point out that at the time of me making that video, PlayStation had just dropped this story trailer. There wasn't really any gameplay in that trailer for me to give an example of why it was only gonna be available on the PlayStation 5. So the only thing I can do for you guys is just give you possibilities on what we could potentially see that could only be powered by the PlayStation 5's proprietary hardware. But now that the game's officially been released with its gameplay at my fingertips, I can finally provide some actual examples of why this game could never see the light of day on the PlayStation 4. Now, before we dive right in, I feel it's only right that I mention Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales, because that's gonna allow me the opportunity to give a perfect segue into the main topic at hand, right? One of the biggest examples of people saying that this game should be available on the PlayStation 4 is because it was done with Spider-Man Miles Morales, which is a fair argument to make. You could actually play the game on last and current gen consoles and essentially get the same experience on both options. But if you're a stickler like me who loves your visuals and the gameplay to be on point, then your experience would vary, because when you're running a game on a new and old console, there are obviously going to be a lot of compromises, and that's the case for Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales. They had to reduce the dynamic shading and the textures on the characters, which was visibly noticeable as soon as you booted up the game. Like, you see Miles Morales' character model sitting on the train, and you notice that he has these different elements such as the fur coat. And on the PlayStation 5 version, you can actually see each follicle and strand of hair, and you can see his hair texture a lot better. But on the PlayStation 4, most of that detail is lost, and it gets reduced to these chunks of hair on his jacket, and his hair looks jet black. But the biggest drawback to the PS4 version of Miles Morales would have to be the loading screens, because there were a ton of them, compared to the PS5 version where loading screens were pretty much non-existent. I mean, don't get me wrong, the PlayStation 4 is by no means a bad version of the game. I just feel like a lot of players missed out on the true potential that Miles Morales could have had if they played it on the PlayStation 5. And I honestly feel like PlayStation 5 players missed out on the ultra potential Miles Morales could have had if it was only a PS5 exclusive, because in a lot of ways the PS4 version of that game held this title back. Because even though this title had a lot of things that boosted the graphical fidelity, they also had to be compromised. You couldn't run the game at native 4K HD with ray tracing and at 60 frames per second. You had to actually go to a fidelity mode, or you had to go into performance mode where you can only run the game at 60 frames per second with ray tracing. And as you know, as soon as you click on that performance mode, you're sacrificing that visual fidelity. But thankfully, that wasn't the case for Marvel Spider-Man 2, because ray tracing was available across all the different options you have, and that wouldn't be possible if this game wasn't a PlayStation 5 exclusive. So you can go ahead and just scratch that off as one example. We are working with some powerful hardware which is almost on par with a PC. They still can't do everything the PC does, because we know that if we had a gaming PC, especially a high-end one, we would be able to maximize all those settings simultaneously as opposed to just picking an option and rolling with it. But the consoles are essentially just optimized PCs. While something like a solid state drive or SSD is nothing new when it comes to the master race community, it has been a major godsend to the PlayStation 5 and Series X, and it's helped propel Marvel Spider-Man 2 to these crazy heights that I thought would never happen. Like, that's been Insomniac Games' main objective, to push the SSD technology to its absolute limits. And I should know, because I was there when Brian Intihar said these things.
We are super excited to welcome everyone to the Marvel Spider-Man 2 preview event.
I was actually at an event for Marvel Spider-Man 2 where he talked about how they were going to make this game take full advantage of all the different things under the PlayStation 5's hood. And one feature which this game took advantage of the SSD hardware would have to be the fast travel. And I know you guys are already going to say, but that was already available on the PlayStation 4, but let me cook for a moment. Yeah, it was available on last gen hardware, but it's not the same as this version of fast travel. When you opted to do fast travel on the PlayStation 4, you were basically just substituting web swinging with a load screen, where you essentially see Spider-Man interacting with civilians on the subway. And hey, I'm not going to knock that. That is a creative way way to mask the fact that it is indeed a load screen. But on the PlayStation 5 versions of Marvel Spider-Man 1, Miles Morales, and Spider-Man 2, those things are pretty much non-existent. You can pretty much get to anywhere you want to go instantaneously. And it just doesn't stop there. There is also a feature that allows you to switch between the Spider-Man on the fly, where you see the camera zoom off very fast to the perspective of the Spider-Man that you chose. So that's another thing you can check off of stuff that you can't do on the PlayStation 4. But moving on, we gotta talk about the web swinging, because that's an aspect of Spider-Man that game developers have to get right. And I feel like Insomniac Games delivered on that. They really made you feel like Spider-Man at his fullest potential. The animations were well done, and I think I speak for everyone when I say they took those awesome web swinging scenes from the Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2 and then injected it into this game. Everything just felt perfect. But there was a big criticism in regards to the actual speed of the game. A lot of people felt like this game's traversal was underwhelming compared to other Spider-Man titles like Spider-Man 2 the movie game and Spider-Man Web of Shadows. And I 100% agree with that argument. This was not on the same level of those games. Like, despite their age, those games made Spider-Man move incredibly fast around the city of New York. But, and this is a huge but, this is a thumper dumper, if you were to move extremely fast in those games, it would come at the compromise of graphics not loading up. Because that's one thing about open world games, they are constantly loading up. As soon as you get to a location, all the details are there. But when it comes to Spider-Man, a character that has superhuman strength and can move extremely fast across the city of New York, the devs had to make sure that they keep that loading at a steady pace that can keep up with Spider-Man. But unfortunately, Insomniac couldn't utilize the PlayStation 4's hardware to make Spider-Man move fast like he did in those yesteryears of Spider-Man 2 the movie game and Spider-Man Web of Shadows. Some of you may remember me giving an example of how the game would possibly move, where I featured this demo of a girl in Unreal Engine 5 soaring across these ruins. You guys said that I was clairvoyant, or I could see the future. You know, I guess y'all can call me Negrodamus. Because that's basically what we get in Marvel Spider-Man 2. Peter and Miles now have these web wings that help them get across the big city of New York, which has been expanded since Spider-Man Miles Morales, might I add. When I was playing the game, I could tell that Insomniac Games wanted to incentivize those wings because they encouraged the player to fly through all these different parts of the city, which are thousands of miles away, and they feel very good, man. It's almost like Just Cause dialed up to 11, because you know you also have like the paraglider aspect of that game. Yeah, just imagine that, but cranked up to insane levels, because you have these wind tunnels that allow you to keep the momentum going or allow you to go even faster, and you also have a slingshot ability which essentially makes you yeet yourself to cover a lot of distance. And I'm blown away at how this game makes you move that fast without compromising any kind of visual fidelity. Like, the textures on buildings remain intact, and even the congested streets of New York stay congested with all the cars and pedestrians. Nothing just pops in at you. And if you want another example of how fast this game moves, Insomniac wastes no time by throwing you into this big boss battle with the Sandman, where he throws Miles throughout the city of New York at an alarming speed. And you would think that would be the end of it, but Miles decides to slingshot himself back at an even faster speed, and you see all the different elements like the sand kind of disappear as you get further away from the Sandman, and everything clears back up, only to see that element return once you get back closer to him. You couldn't do that on the PlayStation 4, and I think you guys see where I'm coming from, but we're gonna keep this thing going, because there is one instance that I feel like it's the creme de la creme explanation of why this game will never see the light of day on the PlayStation 4. Something that I bet the developers over at Insomniac are loving is how this new hardware eases up the workflow that they have and makes all these different possibilities a possibility. There's a running joke going around that Insomniac Games' shoulders are hurting because they've been carrying the PlayStation 5 when it comes to their exclusives. In my opinion, they can basically eat that thing called impossible and crap out something called success, which is what they've been seeing a lot of recently over the past years. While it may seem like Marvel Spider-Man 2 is their first PlayStation 5 exclusive, it's not their first rodeo. Many forget that Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart was an actual PlayStation 5 exclusive, which is also a title that was developed by Insomniac Games. When it comes to the Ratchet game series, the development is usually handled by the North Carolina team for Insomniac Games, games, but this time around for Rift Apart, it was developed by the entire team from both studios because they realized that this was going to be a big, ambitious leap into next-gen territory, and since they had those new toys to play with, they had to make sure that they were going to come correct. According to the creative director Mike Daly, he knew from the start that Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart would be a PS5 exclusive, and they wanted to take full advantage of that fact. He said he wanted to make a game that was new and took the experience further than it had before, and given the SSD's lightning fast capabilities, they had to come up with something that was going to complement that. So they came up with the Dimensional Rifts gimmick, which allowed players to project from one place to another near instantaneous speeds, and it was a game changer. I can only imagine how excited the developers are at all the different possibilities they have now that this new technology is at their fingertips, because the PlayStation 4, it kind of limited that creativity because there's so many things you can do without going out of those parameters of the impossible, right? You can't overextend yourself on old gen hardware because of the limitations, but now that the PlayStation 5 is here and there are still so many different uncharted territories to explore, they're gonna be pushing the envelope, man. And that's what they did with Marvel Spider-Man 2. If anything, and this is my honest opinion, I don't think Marvel Spider-Man 2 really just brought a lot to the table in terms of the new gameplay mechanics. In a lot of ways, it played it safe and they just added things from the previous installments and kind of improved upon it in certain areas. Where it shines the most is its technicalities. Like, it is a technical marvel in terms of all the things it can do. Not only was Insomniac Games able to leverage their experience that they had from the previous two Spider-Man titles, they were also able to do that with Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart by taking that Dimensional Rift gimmick and applying it to Marvel Spider-Man 2. Spoiler alert to those of you who haven't played the game yet, but there is a mission involving Miles Morales and the Black Cat, and Miles has to warn her about Kraven the Hunter coming to get her, and his hunter goons are right on her trail. Like, they're at the Sanctum Sanctorum and she busts out of that thing using the Wand of Watum. And if you read the Doctor Strange comics, you already know what this object is about. It's a magical artifact that allows the wielder to jump through different dimensions, which is what Felicia does to get to her lover who's located in Paris. Now, I'm not going to get into all the details pertaining who her lover is because that right there is already mired in controversy, and like I said, this video has already gone on long enough. But yeah, this mission was insane because it goes into this awesome chase sequence where Felicia is creating these portals and Miles gets sucked into some of them, which go from New York to these crazy locations like the Antarctic areas and all these other little locations that I can't remember right off the bat. But the sheer fact that the PlayStation 5 allows you to do that is insane, man. Like, Insomniac Games went ham with that element. Like, there's a part where you're fighting alongside Felicia and she's actually using it to teleport herself to locations where you're at. They basically flexed on all the developers out there and showed them that a Doctor Strange game can be done. But anyway, I can name off other examples such as Mysterio, who had his own crazy missions that I'm pretty sure required the power of the SSD. But you guys get my point. The fact of the matter is that Marvel Spider-Man 2 will never be on the PlayStation 4. It'll remain a PlayStation 5 exclusive for the time being. Like, other than that platform, I can only see it going to the PC in the near future because it's more than capable of handling a game of that nature. So yeah, I'm sorry to those who haven't been able to get a PlayStation 5 and simply don't have the finances to do so, but this is the new era we're in when it comes to games. Video game developers are starting to realize that this new hardware that they have at their fingertips is very conducive to their creativity and they want to exploit that to the fullest. So yeah, but anyways, that's all I got for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed this video. I know I went on a tangent with some of the things, but I had to take you there to get to this point. But what do you think about this? Do you guys agree with me that this game wouldn't be able to be on the PlayStation 4? Or do you disagree and feel like it's just a marketing ploy made by PlayStation? Let me know in the comment section below. As always, I ask that you like or dislike the video. It doesn't have to be a thumbs up, it can be a thumbs down. But if you really enjoyed this video, it would help me out tremendously if you shared it with all your friends and followers on all the different social media outlets. Sharing is caring. Well, once again, this is your boy RBG, aka the Random Black Gamer, signing out on another video. I'll catch you guys later. Peace out.